Welcome to Chapter 6. We're going to be talking about the stress emotions today, which are anger, fear, and joy. Stressful situations can promote feelings of either anger or fear, and in some cases both. These two primary emotions are associated with the stress response: anger, which produces the urge to fight, and fear, which promotes the urge to run and hide. Here's a quote to remember. Or another way to say it is, "This too shall pass." The day will pass. We don't have to be stuck in this moment forever. Life, unfortunately, sometimes goes on, and that's why it will pass. I like to say that to myself, to remind myself that I won't be stuck here in this moment forever. And it's really important to remember when we're feeling anger or fear. When we talk about emotional well-being, it's defined as the ability to feel and express the entire range of human emotions, and to control them, and not to be controlled by them. This takes learning and unlearning and implementation and time for sure. You may think that it's impossible to control anger, but this is not true. It takes some work, and most of us will probably spend the rest of our lives trying to be better at this. I know I will. I have to work on not exploding at certain times. And why? It's simply just not effective. I don't want anyone to talk to me like that. I know what I do. I shut down when someone acts in anger towards me or shouting. So why would I think that someone else is going to want to resolve anything with me if I act in anger in some way? They're not. And you know what happens? It causes stress because nothing is being resolved, and now I'm even more angry. As children, we're taught that some emotions are not okay at certain times. Okay, you can't shout right now. You need to calm down and relax. You can't talk back. And this helps to guide us to control our emotions. Someone actually put on Facebook the other day, I like this quote. It says, "Our only attitude towards our children should be this: I love you too much to let you act like that." And I actually started to use that with my children, because it makes the corrections that I'm giving towards my children get to the very root of why I'm even doing it. It's coming from a loving situation or a loving position. My best friend told me last week that one of her children was starting preschool, and I asked her how she was doing with that, and she said she was good, but she was a little nervous because she's a little spitfire. She seems to have anger issues. She's really cute, but she has anger issues. Like we said before, anger needs to be controlled like any other emotion, and it's okay to feel, but you don't let it control us. Parents and relatives are a force here to help us do that. Just because you have a child with anger issues doesn't mean it's who they are. Just because an adult has anger issues doesn't mean that's who they are. The emotions need to be managed, and we have the ability to do that. One more thing I want to mention here. Last week I saw a show with my kids on National Geographic about the wildest animals, or animals gone wild. And they talked about the majesty of elephants, but there's a trend of elephants that's getting more aggressive. One of the reasons they thought this is because of this. The older males keep the younger males in check. In adolescence, the younger males become aggressive because of sexual tension, and they start to be bullies. Every time this happens, an older male will step in and push them, and kind of to tell the adolescent that the behavior is not appropriate. The young elephant has to manage his emotions. The problem is that poachers are killing these older elephants because of their tusks, because they're much larger than the younger ones, and you could actually get tusks on the market for $20,000. So when you start to take the older males out of the equation, there's no one to teach the younger ones to manage their emotions and what is appropriate, and we see elephants becoming more aggressive and like charging cars and people and killing people. We need to check our emotions just like the elephants do, to be accountable to someone. Well, not all of us have a family situation that has taught us how to do this, so we need to learn it. We need to learn creative ways to let out our anger so that we can have resolution to our stress in a non-hostile way. Here are some emotions that can come from anger. Now, anger is a survival emotion. It can help us. Animals get angry when someone comes onto their territory. We would all probably become angry if someone came into our homes uninvited, and we would do something about it to protect ourselves. Someone comes to attack you, or you get angry, you fight to protect yourself. So here's some more information on anger. So all anger is a result of unmet expectations. We think something's going to happen and it doesn't, and we get angry. We think we're going to get dessert after dinner and we don't, we can get angry. We think a friend or a loved one is going to act or respond in a certain way or give us a certain gift at Christmas and it doesn't happen, we may just get angry. It's that unmet expectation. Gas pump rage. I can't say that I've ever seen this, but for whatever reason, there is some expectation of how things would go and they didn't, and someone gets angry. The problem is that a lot of times we don't tell people what our expectations are. We just think that they should know, and they aren't met, and we get angry. And this happens all the time in relationships. Sometimes these expectations are social norms, thoughts that our culture has on a whole of what is appropriate or not, like don't butt in line, don't interrupt, give an older person your seat, don't chew with your mouth open, don't burp loudly in public, and the list goes on. Probably have some of your own personal ones that you care about more than others. This is the term that's used to describe the awareness of emotional well-being, the ability to feel and safely express the entire range of human emotions and to control them rather than to be controlled by them. The issue here is that our culture often tells boys not to cry, not to get in touch with their emotions. The point being is that it's important that all people be emotionally literate. There are some gender differences, and on the opposite side, socially we allow men to express their anger openly and freely in public. If a female did that, we'd think she's crazy or unfeminine or unattractive. We even seem to encourage men to show anger in sports like ice hockey and football. Because of this, researchers show that women seem to not deal with their anger because culturally it's not acceptable. Now this is not all the time, but sometimes. Sometimes we suppress it and we don't deal with it, which is not helpful because there are unresolved issues and they need to be dealt with before the emotion can be resolved. Men and women respond to the same different stressors differently, and we also seem to have different stressors. So what happens to the body when we feel anger or fear? With anger, our face gets flushed, we have a greater percentage of blood flow to the skin on the face and the neck, and fear is actually the opposite. It causes the face to be pale. Researchers that focus on how stress causes disease found that anger can cause a higher incidence of migraine headaches, ulcers, colitis, which is inflammation of the colon, arthritis, and hypertension or high blood pressure. What they were surprised to find is that hostility and anger was associated with the development of heart disease, making it the most predominant disease-related behavioral trait. Now, coronary heart disease is preventable with nutrition and exercise. It is actually the #1 killer of women and men in the United States. So what does this say about us? So what is catharsis? It's the emptying of emotions, crying, yelling, laughing, even sometimes exercising. We feel relieved. The weight is off our shoulders. So studies have been done to see if people who are encouraged to express their anger, if they felt relieved afterwards. And what they found is that it was actually the opposite. They felt validated and they even got more angry. There's a great example in your book on page 132 about 100 aerospace engineers who were put through a study that show this whole idea. So how do we express our anger so we feel relieved? It feels cathartic. Well, there's a couple of rules here. So first of all, for anger to feel or be resolved, it must be directed at the person or object that is causing the threat and not at random people or things. For anger to feel resolved, there has to be some sense of justice, like someone goes to jail or even being allowed to give or tell your side of the story. Revenge is not to be used. We also want to create some insight. Writing things down can often show us insight as we slow down and we have time to explain our thoughts, or even talking to a friend to get another perspective. We also want the other person to change if they've done something to anger us. The most beneficial conversations are calm ones with the person who has angered us so that we can understand what they might have been thinking, to give us insight. Sometimes there's miscommunication and we just do not understand what the other person is coming from. We can find out if we talk about it. Sometimes we aren't so clear on how we express our feelings. We may feel uncomfortable, so we candy coat a conversation, we beat around the bush, and it's hard for another person to know what you mean. Psychologists suggest that the use of I statements. I feel angry because I, rather than you made me mad when you. The later one causes defense mechanisms from the other person, and that's what we don't want because that does not help have a healthy conversation. For anger to be resolved, it's important that anger is resolved for both sides, for you and the other person. This is so retaliation doesn't result from either one of you, and that would cause the cycle to continue, which makes any issue much harder to resolve. So it's not good to hold in anger or to just blurt it all out. The expression of anger, like love, requires direct diplomatic content in conversations. I love this quote. I saw someone posted this on Facebook a couple of years ago, and I repeat this to myself often to try and remind myself to control my emotions with other people. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. If you met me on the street, or even if you just saw me, you would have no idea the things that I'm dealing with in my life. If I saw you at the grocery store, I would have no idea the complexities of things that you are dealing with. And for me to get mad at you and say something angry because you're moving a little slower in the checkout line is not fair. And I actually try to remind myself that the reasons that people do things just might be because of the things they're dealing with. Now, so maybe we can give people a little grace when they get angry with us. Maybe it's just because of the things that they're going through in their life, and they need to work on managing that, just like we do, and maybe we can just be an example to them on how to do so. Like anger, fear is an element of survival, to run and hide when there's a threat that can be and this can be very helpful in certain situations. A lot of feelings come out of fear. Anxiety is usually interchangeable with fear, meaning the same thing. Anger gives us a rush of adrenaline with a surge of energy, but fear is very draining emotionally. There's a couple different types of fear, rational versus irrational. Rational is very useful. It's fear. It's like when a bear is running after you, or a dog is looking at you and showing their teeth. There's an emergency and you need to get somewhere quickly. And irrational is an overwhelming fear of anxiety based on a false perception. You think someone's outside and they're not really. You think someone's mad at you and they're not really. Same thing as warranted. Warranted is a useful fear. Unwarranted is when people get stuck in the fear mode based on a non-physical threat. Virtually anything can trigger fear, but most commonly anxiety falls into one of these 6 categories. So how do we overcome fear? Well, behavioral therapy helps. This is coping and relaxation techniques that are used to really desensitize ourselves to stress, those which we're going over in class. Another one is systematic desensitization. This is a process of learning not to get stressed about something in small, manageable stages. So if someone's fearful of dogs, they start to look at pictures of dogs. Then they look at the dog that's right out the window, and then they're in the same room as a dog. I like this quote about fear. Fear is the cheapest room in the house. It is a lonely place to be. It is a dark place to be sometimes. And I would much prefer seeing you live under better conditions. Fear and anger are probably the 2 emotions we associate with stress, but let's not forget about eustress, that good stress. Joy and happiness are also known as eustress. Here's some research about joy and happiness. Researchers have looked into whether happiness is a function of nature or nurture. Are we born with it, or is it something that is learned? Well, the answer is it's a little of both, but overwhelmingly we have the ability to create happiness in our mind, which can bring us emotional balance. So it seems that it's easier to say than do, but it isn't all that complicated. In high school, there was a group of 4 of us girls that were pretty close, and one day someone said, "Hey, let's have an up day." Now, we're not talking about doing drugs. We were just talking about we were going to decide for that day. It didn't matter what was going on. We were just going to put that to the side, and we were going to all be in a good mood. And it was like we just turned on the switch, and no one ever broke rank, and it really did work. All we had to do was decide to be happy.